A lot of us feel behind in our careers, not because we failed, but because our path doesn't look like the one we were taught to expect. We're often taught that success looks like a straight line. You pick a path, you climb the ladder, you get more senior over time. But what happens when your path doesn't look like that? In my life, I've started over for more times than I can count. And for so many years, that made me feel like I was constantly behind. In this video, I'm breaking down how I reinvented my career over and over again, from computer science to music photography to esports to talent management, and how even though my path was far from linear, I was actually collecting skills and perspectives that all led me to where I am today. We'll talk about why clarity doesn't come before action, how treating your life like a series of experiments can actually move you forward, and what finally helped me reframe all of those pivots as progress instead of failure. Hi, my name's Sandra. I share honest reflections on growth, alignment, and building a life that actually fits you. So if that interests you, don't forget to hit subscribe and let's get into the video. When I look back at why I always felt behind, it all comes down to one belief that shaped how I viewed my career from the very beginning. For the longest time, I thought that I had to figure out my career path early, otherwise I would be behind everyone else. Success felt like a race and the clock was ticking. This belief didn't come out of nowhere. I was surrounded by it ever since I was a kid. In grade school, we're encouraged to have extracurriculars that line up with the major we want to apply for. In college, we're told to pick a major that supports the job we want. And then after graduation, we're just supposed to get that job and climb the ladder from there. When I chose my college major, I was honestly just making a kind of educated guess. Computer science seemed like it made sense. It would lead to a good career, a stable income, and there was just a clear path forward. When I got accepted into Carnegie Mellon for computer science, it felt like a slam dunk. Like, okay, this is it. This is the path I'm supposed to be on. But once I was in it, I constantly felt like the dumbest person in the room. I remember thinking something must be wrong with me, because for everyone around me, it seemed like it just clicked for them. Regardless, I forced myself to keep going. I had already committed and I didn't think that walking away was even an option. At the same time, I had this other dream, one that I'd been told wasn't viable, wasn't a real career path, and would never lead to a stable income. And that dream was music photography. I felt this constant pull towards it that I just couldn't ignore. So I got a camera, started going to shows, and began to just put myself out there. And that's when I started getting this internal conflict, because on one hand, I had this perfect life laid out for me in computer science, but on the other hand, music photography lit this fire in me and it made me feel alive. And it was the complete opposite of what I was supposed to be doing. So I tried doing both at the same time. I skipped classes to go on tour. I would be photographing a show every night and then frantically doing my programming assignments in the tour bus or in the green room. And eventually I burned out. I started struggling with depression. I was failing my classes, just trying to live two completely different lives at the same time, and neither one was getting my full self. Music photography felt unsustainable, computer science was not fulfilling, and I felt like I was just failing at everything. At that time, I thought that was just proof that I wasn't cut out for either path. But recently, when I read the Designing Your Life book by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans, I finally started to understand that this wasn't failure at all. The whole premise of the book is you're not supposed to plan your way into the perfect life or career. You design it using the same method that designers use to build products, through design thinking. Design thinking is a problem-solving approach where you learn from action, not from prediction or optimization. Basically, instead of trying to plan your entire life out in advance, the author suggests running small experiments to learn what works, what doesn't, and adjust as you go. In the book, these experiments are called prototypes. And when I read this, I realized that what I thought were mistakes or detours or actually doing something really important. Computer science and music photography were my first two prototypes, and I was getting valuable data from them. The book also talks about something called dysfunctional beliefs, which are assumptions that we've absorbed that feel true but actually limit our ability to design a fulfilling life. These can look like everyone else is ahead of me, stability matters more than fulfillment. Mine was a belief that if I didn't know my path early, I was already behind. But what I didn't know at the time was just because my path was not linear didn't mean that I wasn't moving forward. After my big burnout, I took a leave of absence from CMU and moved back home with my parents to focus on my health and just reset. During that time, I was taking classes at a local college to slowly finish my degree requirements, but I also tried something new. I started streaming on Twitch. I didn't start streaming because it was part of a plan and I didn't think that it could actually become a career. At the time, I was honestly just kind of existing. I didn't have a goal in mind. Gaming had just become an escape for me during a really difficult period, and streaming just felt like a good way to connect with the community when it was a really lonely time in my life. So I streamed pretty consistently for about a year. I slowly built a community around my channel. Eventually, gaming stopped being just a hobby, and I fell in love with the world of gaming and esports. It was that same pull that I had felt from music photography, which looking back makes a lot of sense because they're both entertainment industries. So streaming was prototype number 3, and it helped me figure out my next general direction, which was the gaming industry. Towards the tail end of this phase, once I started figuring out what came next, I identified one big lesson that I had learned. I didn't need to know what was waiting for me at the top of the stairs or even how I would get there. All I needed to do was focus on the step that was right in front of me. And that perspective gave me a lot of comfort. It was enough to keep me moving forward. Once I had made the decision that I wanted to work in esports, I thought that meant applying a skill that I'd already learned, which was event photography. I had done it in music, I was pretty good at it, and so that felt like the most obvious entry point. So I started putting myself out there. I went to events like TwitchCon and PAX. I networked a lot. I got involved in collegiate esports, and I started applying to jobs, picked up some freelance gigs, and magically I got my first full-time job in esports working for an LCS team. So I took a leap of faith, packed up, moved across the country to LA, and I took a massive pay cut compared to software engineering, but I was living the dream, working with creators and esports athletes. I did get to photograph the players on stage, from the LCS to the League of Legends World Championships. There are actually a lot of small prototypes during this era. I tried a bunch of different roles in esports: team manager, social media manager, influencer marketing. And I was trying to find one that felt right. But each time I took on a new role, I felt like I was starting over. That was my second big dysfunctional belief. I thought that every time I pivoted, I was resetting my progress. But the reality was, each of these prototypes taught me skills and perspectives that built upon each other and gave me valuable data about what was a fit and what was not. During my time in esports, I struggled a lot with imposter syndrome. I was working on really exciting projects, but somehow I still felt stuck. I was comparing myself to others a lot, so I always felt like I wasn't good enough. When I wasn't getting the promotion I wanted or the pay I wanted, I started getting impatient instead of just being grateful for what I had. I had a hard time seeing a clear path forward, and I thought it was a me problem. But the real issue was that I was waiting for my career to give me validation. And once I realized that, my entire mindset shifted. I stopped trying to derive my sense of worth from my job. For the first time in my life, I let my work just be one part of my life instead of my whole identity. I started seeking balance, finding fulfillment in other parts of my life as well, like my relationships and my hobbies and just this life that I was building for myself. I ended up leaving esports for a more stable tech marketing job. It gave me a lot of space to focus on myself and just have fun. Honestly, it was great. My social life was better than it had ever been before. And then I got laid off. Around that time, I was dealing with some unexpected personal trauma. that really affected my sense of safety, which I'll talk about in another video. So, when I lost my job, my nervous system went straight into survival mode. I started mass applying to jobs. I was like, I just need a job, any job. And somehow I got an offer to become a talent manager. On paper, it made a lot of sense. I'd always enjoyed working with creators, but honestly, I just took it because it was the first job that I got. Once I was in it, the imposter syndrome came rushing back. I felt like I needed to prove myself. I was working really hard, really long hours. I built up a roster and I still felt like it wasn't enough. It wasn't until I got laid off again that I realized another dysfunctional belief that I'd been carrying all this time, that my sense of security and self-worth depended on being chosen by others. So I took another leap of faith. This time, instead of waiting for someone else to choose me, I decided to forge my own path. I took all these skills and experiences that I'd built up across all my different prototypes and I put them towards starting my own business, which I'll talk about in another video as well. For the first time in my life, everything started to feel aligned, not because I had it all figured out, but because I started trusting myself to figure it out no matter what came next. In hindsight, that feeling of always being behind was coming from my dysfunctional beliefs, when the truth was I was learning and growing every step of the way. So if you're feeling behind, maybe the question isn't what's my 5-year plan? Maybe it's just what is one small step that I can take that gives me more information. For me, a huge part of finding alignment was finally overcoming imposter syndrome. If you want to learn more about that, you can check out this video over here. And if there's any part of my journey that you want me to dive into deeper, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Bye.